Okay, there's a bet. What was the bet?
Which crew then? Which show?
What's going on, everybody? This is dkdynamite, and I did talk a little bit about my new blue intro and outro a couple of videos ago, but this is what I believe my second video where I'm using my new zombies intro and outro. Really hope you guys like it. I'll leave the individual down below in the description who came up with this phenomenal work for me. I really like it. I think it's a great revamp as we get closer to Black Ops 4. Now today we're going to be talking about Classified, aka the 5 remake that we'll be releasing as part of the Black Ops Pass for Call of Duty Black Ops 4. Now I did talk a little bit about Classified in one of my recent videos where I did a live reaction to the E3 Coliseum live stream where Jason Blundell revealed Classified as the 5 remake. Even though Classified was leaked a little while before that, we didn't exactly know what Classified was. He of course broke it down and kind of told us that Classified is a prequel to 5 in the sense that we're going to be seeing the Ultimis crew on the map, and it sort of sets up, as he said, the events of the map we all know and love, which is 5. We know Yuri is the Pentagon thief. The official Zombies timeline did confirm this. So going into Classified, we should feel more informed on the backstory of the map itself. So first off, the fact that you can see the map 5 when you teleport on Keener through Toten could be a big hint that Ultimis actually plays a bigger role than we thought when it comes to the Pentagon outbreak. So this could also support that Classified occurs in between Ascension and Keener through Toten. I know the timeline could be very confusing with paradoxes and fractures. That's something that you're going to have to bear with me on here, because I do understand all of the fractures and displacements to the fullest, but I'm not going to go in detail and confuse you guys here in this video. But what I will say is that in terms of Ultimis' journey throughout Black Ops 1, and maybe a little bit of World at War in there as well, there are things in between that could have occurred in different timelines, which may not necessarily reflect on what the official timeline says, but Treyarch is known for adding in these fractures and this and that, and kind of using Monty as this stepping stool to a greater universe. And even if you don't like that, I do believe that even though the Chronorium was being read from the perspective of Edward Richtofen, he could, of course, be missing in this Ultimis crew that we see on Classified. People like Rad Austin were also talking about this recently and essentially saying, well, you know what, it's a good theory. Maybe Dr. Gersh is part of the Ultimis crew that we see on Classified, and Blundell didn't want to spoil that with his discussion about the map. Maybe he wants to do that as a surprise. And that's definitely a plausible theory. I like that a lot. I'm not going to go and say the Ascension poster has anything to do with what we're going to be seeing on Classified. Dr. Gersh is on that poster, and that is it. Blundell confirmed it. The timeline confirmed it. That is it. But I do think that to go ahead and say, hey, we see Ultimis Richtofen along with some Primus characters on one of the so-called loading screens that were released with the official Call of Duty Zombies comic. So that could explain, hey, Ultimis Richtofen is not being featured on Classified as one of the starting characters because he was with some of these Primus characters in this side quest, which will be featured in a future DLC map throughout Black Ops 4's DLC season. So on Classified, you'll have 3 Ultimis characters, Dempsey, Nikolai, and Takio, along with someone like Dr. Gersh or Yuri or someone important in the Call of Duty Zombies lore, and that'll essentially set up future DLC maps, so on and so forth, and that would be a cool theory. I can go along with that. Or we can just say, hey, Classified is going to have the 4 Ultimis characters that we're all used to by now, and it may take place after the moon. It may take place, let's say, in between some of the fan favorite maps. We just don't know. It could be many different things right now, and I'm for any of them. I'm down for any one of these theories that we're seeing online right now. They all sound very interesting and very plausible. Now, the other thing I wrote down here was
awaiting launch initiation.
Kaboom.
My eyesight is clear. My hands do not shake.
Double points! Insta-kill!
If only divorce were this easy. Enjoy hell!
Let's leave just to go on another wild goose chase. Only we're the geese and the zombies are the other something. Wait, there's a saying in here somewhere. Isn't there? Little help?
Again, the Doctor is victorious!
This is not how Takeo will meet his demise.
Where does this man with a hammer hide?
Red telephones on DLC 5 Ascension could be hinting that Treyarch knew they were doing 5 Remastered or the so-called 5 Remake.
Okay, let me tell you this way.
Okay.
So it's the original crew.
Wow.
So it's the Ultimis gang. So Black Ops 4 is going to have our Primus crew in there, and then also our Ultimis crew and our new gang as well.
Wow.
So
All right, Jason.
and that's gonna set up some of the craziness that we saw in 5. You know, why did that happen? How did they get there? All that kind of good stuff. And it's a wonderful style. We're kind of approaching it in a very unique way artistically.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But it also kind of folds into all those kind of mechanisms that we talked about on the reveal, so the kind of custom mutations and so forth. All that stuff then works as well. So every map that we're doing all works with the challenger system and so forth. So not only is it a kind of brand new take on that part of the storyline, and obviously a joy to go back and update it and modernize it, but it's a new part in the story also.
Fire sale! Time to die, giant!
Fire on sale.
Oh. Daddy! Make him stop!
I can control them all! I can destroy them all!
But the next thing I wrote down here was the After Moon theory. So if the map features Ultimis after Moon, and somehow they ended up at the Pentagon after witnessing the destruction of Earth from Griffin Station, then that would mean that this would be a modified Ultimis group. Since in the Big Bang Theory ending, we of course know that Samantha and Richtofen switched souls, and Ultimis was essentially left stranded on the moon. Now, there were some small theories around the community saying that Ultimis eventually died on the moon, but we do know a little bit about what happened to them because during the end game of the buried Easter egg, we know that Maxis plucks Samantha's soul from Richtofen's body. It doesn't necessarily say where his body was at, but we could assume that they were still stranded on the moon. They could have been surviving. They could have actually been teleporting back and forth amongst the Pentagon and the moon. We just don't know, but we do know that little bit of information thanks to the buried ending. But it's definitely an interesting theory to really see what happened to them after the Big Bang Theory Easter egg and essentially during or before the events of Transit. That would be pretty cool to see. Now let me know what you think of that down below. So in terms of the Easter egg on this map, what I can say is we're guaranteed full-fledged quest on 9 Voids of Despair and Blood of the Dead. We all know that. That's been confirmed. But for this map, the fact that it's a part of the Black Ops Pass kind of scares me. It's not a pre-order bonus. It's part of the Black Ops Pass. So that could mean that since not everybody will have access to this map, I do believe that kind of supports the theory that they're not going to go ahead and make a full-fledged huge quest on the map for the sake of, let's say, 70 to 80% of players actually giving the map a chance after they've bought the Black Ops Pass. And people even buy the Black Ops Pass just for multiplayer. So, once again, similar to the Giant, they may not put all of their efforts into this map's main quest. If it even has one, it could just be a basic survival map for the sake of adding replayability to this game. It could have some very interesting tie-ins to the storyline, but nothing too big, nothing too major, nothing too complicated. In terms of the side quest though, if it's like the Giant, I don't think they're going to go that simple with this, because the fact that they're making this big change and adding Ultimis to this map just hints that there's something even greater happening here in terms of story and gameplay. Now, even though you can say, oh, well, they added Premise to the Giant, aka Derice, and that didn't change very much, but once again, that was Black Ops 3. The game had a campaign. The game had a lot more to it, so not a lot of time went to zombies, even though they managed to pull off a phenomenal DLC season and DLC 5. So times have changed, obviously, and I do think in terms of storyline right now, there is more of a reason to add more to a lot of these maps. If the map is going to be so simple, then they would have just remastered the original map for the sake of adding mutations and survival, and for the sake of getting into a new engine without that two-it down system for all the fans who may not have liked 5 back in the day. Now, I did learn recently that the voice actors didn't re-record their lines for DLC 5 maps. That would have took way too long, and obviously you can tell from playing the maps. They're just revamped, sound less condensed, and feel more natural to the map's environment. So they don't need to re-record lines for a 5 remastered with the same voice actors from before just to make the map work. They clearly have intentions to further their story with this map. That's very clear. The other theories included between Shang and Moon, between Ascension and Call of the Dead, things like that. And once again, I don't want them to do something that specific, even though I'm down for it because it could be pretty cool thanks to the excellent writing team Treyarch has. I feel like that would weaken the storyline push that this map is supposed to have, where we're kind of getting more closure for these characters and filling in those gaps. I feel like doing something between Shang and Moon would be like, oh, well, they went on this tiny side quest in between these two maps that wasn't featured on the timeline because it was so tiny and not really relevant. I want it to be something massive. I'd rather have this be in a fractured universe where all types of shit gets fucked up that later fucks up other universes. I'd rather have that, even though I'd be down to see what Treyarch can come up with. The other thing I wrote down here was Broken Arrow and other things before Black Ops 2. So we know Broken Arrow plays a pretty large role within the official Call of Duty Zombies comic, gives Russman some more backstory. We hear a lot about it within Black Ops 2 in general, so to be able to see some more subtle hints and maybe even some more references, maybe even some direct quotes about Broken Arrow in this map would be quite interesting. We do know that Broken Arrow becomes a thing after the events of 5, so we could maybe see something in Classified where they say, hey, Project Broken Arrow isn't a thing yet, will not be a thing as of right now, it's not needed, and then towards the end of maybe the so-called Easter egg on Classified, they'll say, hey, maybe Broken Arrow needs to become a thing, and then 5 is kind of the tip of the iceberg for why Broken Arrow comes into existence. I think that could be something really interesting for the official Call of Duty Zombies timeline. Could really, once again, fill in those gaps for things that we don't know much about, Broken Arrow being one of them. We know quite a bit about it now thanks to the comic, but I think little things like that on Classified could also fill in those gaps. Maybe a possible Russman cameo or something on the map would be very useful. Maybe seeing his name card somewhere. Maybe he worked somewhere before Broken Arrow that we didn't know about. We'll just have to see, but that was one thing I was really thinking about. But nonetheless, Classified is a prequel to 5. Now, let it be a map that perfectly fits in between some OG Black Ops 1 maps, or if it's using the temporal rifts element like Chronicles with fractured timelines that feature nearly identical but slightly modified things like Gobblegums and so forth. That's one of the things I wrote down here on this list because based on what Blundell said, this is going to set up what happens in 5. So if it's a fractured timeline, and this doesn't really happen in the original timeline, well, this could become that paradox where, hey, 5 only became a thing because of this alternate timeline and the occurrence in that timeline. So that's also a theory, and I brought that up earlier without confusing you guys. paradoxes are a thing in zombies. Could also be a reason why Treyarch wants to go with this new story that they're going to be releasing on 9 and Voyage of Despair, because they kind of want to say, hey, the Ether storyline is going to get a little more simple throughout the Black Ops 4 DLC season and even the launch itself. So let's kind of get rid of that whole temporal rifts and fractured timelines nonsense with our new story and let it die down a little bit with our Ether story we're going to be covering as well. So that's why I do think the whole fractured timeline shit might get dropped by the time this game comes out. But if it's continued, then hey, it could make some sense. But I do think paradoxes will sort of remain a thing if those official loading screens from the comic books become more relevant throughout Black Ops 4's life, because I do think that those things have meaning, and I think those are like early concepts that Treyarch has already come up with, which haven't been executed on actual maps yet, but maps like Classified and even Blood of the Dead could of course lead to some of those concepts that we saw in the comic, and I'm interested in it. I think merging groups amongst Ultimis, Primus, and Victus is going to be quite interesting. One last thing I wanted to bring up was how we're going to also be seeing a remastered Winter's Howl, Pentagon Thief, remastered Piggy, of course, and the first buildable trap, something to keep mind of. Now, if Yuri is part of this Ultimis crew that we get on Classified, then it will be extremely interesting to see how he goes from that to Ascension to making the decision to becoming the Pentagon Thief on 5. So that would be a really cool arc for him that we didn't really get on the timeline. We just got kind of his basic information and why he did what he did and what his motives were. But to actually see that in a cutscene or as a playable character would be very fascinating. But just keep that in mind. We're going to get a lot of remastered content that is definitely not forgotten. And for one, a lot of people don't like 5. I streamed it the other day. It's a hard map. It's not a map that you can say, hey, I'm going to get to round 50 very easily on it. It's not a map that you can say, hey, the Wonder Weapon is so good that I can camp in a corner and just use it until I need ammo for it. It's not an easy map. That's all I'm going to put it at. If you have fun with the mechanics, with the small mechanics around the map, then hey, you'll be excited for this remaster. But for YouTubers and for other people who never really gave the map a chance or just didn't have a good experience on it, I can definitely understand why they're not really in front of this remastered 5 situation. But I do think that with the map featuring Ultimis and with some unexpected twist definitely coming to this map, I don't think it's going to play out like 5 did. First of all, the Black Ops 1 engine is very outdated. The 2-hit down system sucks. I get it. We're not going to be seeing any of that on Black Ops 4 Classified. The map is going to feel fresh. It's going to remind us as to why 5 is an iconic map. It's going to show us some fresh new gameplay experiences. Don't forget, rush mode and mutations, all that kind of shit that's being introduced in BO4 is also going to be available for maps like Blood of the Dead and Classified. But that's about it. Thanks for watching, everybody. This has been dkdynamite. Hope you guys liked my theories and all the notes that I wrote down here for you guys. Let me know what your theories are down below in the comments. Stay tuned in for the latest information in regards to Black Ops 4 until when we get more information on this map. My best bets are on Comic-Con. Peace out, YouTube.